All right, hey everybody, welcome once again to another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michael Pacheco, and today with me, Alan, I just realized I haven't asked you how to pronounce your last name properly. Is it Heymann?
It is.
Okay, awesome.
Well done.
Um, then I'm not going to start over. We'll just run with this. I got it the first time. Alan Heymann. Alan has a knack for coaching fellow introverts, helping them find their superpowers in an extroverted world. Alan, I love that so far, so I want to circle back to that one for sure. Alan specializes in coaching through transitions. To date, Alan has coached leaders who were born in 26 countries and work on 5 continents. His clients have spanned corporations, including Fortune 50 corporations, non-profit organizations, public utilities, federal, county, and municipal governments. Alan, welcome to The Remarkable Coach.
Michael, thank you so much. It's great to be here with you and your audience today.
I appreciate you making time for us, man.
Yeah.
To kick off the podcast, I always just like to invite our guests to tell us a little bit more about yourself in your own words and why coaching.
Okay. Well, it depends on how much time you have. So, I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a runner, a reader, and somebody who likes to occasionally watch a movie or a little bit of TV these days. But professionally, I've been an executive and leadership coach for a little while, self-employed as many of us are after 20 plus years of working for other people, primarily in the fields of marketing and communications. And so my origin story with coaching is pretty similar, I think, to a lot of people who discover something that they believe in, and that I was a customer or a client before I was a practitioner. And I hired my first coach probably 8 or 9 years ago at this point, and was going through a pretty rough patch of leadership waters in a position that I had held. And my coach helped me understand a really important distinction for me at that point in my career, which was the difference between my stuff, what I was carrying around every day, and we all have it. It's different for everybody. We all have it. And the institutional stuff that was never going to change. It was like being mad at gravity. So understanding that distinction actually helped me onto a different career path and got me into a much better, more applicable place for what I like to do and for what suited me as a person. But I didn't forget the lesson, and I didn't forget the power of coaching and that transformation that it brought on for me. And the more I thought about it and the more I investigated and explored a little bit, the more I realized this is something that I really wanted to do. And come to find out, coaching pulls together a bunch of the different threads of things that I've really enjoyed doing throughout almost my entire career, whether it is telling stories or helping other people tell their stories, which is something I did when I started my career as a journalist, or helping people with their communication skills, or helping other people advance in their careers. All of these are things that I've been doing for a while before they came together in a single occupation. And it is fascinating. It is never dull. It is one day is always different from the next. And I might be working in nonprofits in government, which is the space I'm personally most familiar with, or I might be working in software or even frozen foods. It just depends on the day.
Nice. Right on. That's great. I want to circle back to something I read in your bio that caught my attention immediately. Coaching fellow introverts. Tell me about that. As a lifelong introvert,
Yes.
I am personally curious.
So it's a specialty, but not an exclusive one. And I say this because I have been in a variety of different working environments throughout my adult life, and some of them quite comfortable and some of them quite uncomfortable. And what has made me uncomfortable historically is the extrovert expectation that if you're going to be a leader, you're going to be this kind of bombastic, chest thumping, alpha male type. And that's not how everybody shows up, nor is it how everybody should show up. So what I've done.
Can we pause there for 1 second, Alan? Would you define introvert and extrovert for us as you understand it? Because I think there's a general kind of sometimes a misunderstanding, or there are different definitions of what introvert might mean. Could you tell us what does it mean for you in this?
Absolutely. And I start, in response to that question in noting that there are connotations for both, and
Right.
that historically the connotation for introvert has been kind of a negative one, or, somewhere below neutral. In that, you might think of us as shy. You might think of us as socially unskilled or maybe somewhat misanthropic. And that's definitely true of some introverts. not all of them, probably not even most of them. So the definition that I like, and if you get to some of the scholarship on this from Susan Cain in her book Quiet and others, it's where do you get your energy from? So, does being around a lot of people for a long period of time fill you up, or does it deplete you? And it has nothing to do with what you enjoy. It has nothing to do with what you're good at. It has to do with where your energy comes from. So I know, for example, as somebody who's got, probably a bit more social skill than he did as a younger person through practice and through time. And as somebody who likes to have an audience, I was a television reporter. I enjoy speaking in front of groups of people, that I will have to budget my energy for these things, because when I get off the stage, I'm going to be tired. I'm not going to want to shake every last hand in the room and hand out all of my business cards. Yeah. I'm going to want to take it easy for the rest of the day and just kind of be by myself or be in a small group. And I know that through practice, and not everybody does. So I think the combination of helping folks understand what gives them energy and where to find it, and how to work through and above and around the expectations that society puts on them, really informs a lot of the work that I do with extroverts. With introverts. And it's not exclusive work, in that once in a while I will get chosen as a coach by somebody who wants the opposite of themselves, who, needs to dial it back some, who can't go to a meeting without sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Those are fun coaching assignments for me, probably because I don't have them very often.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. That's the same definition that I understand as well, is where do you draw your energy from, whether, like you said, if it's spending some time alone or spending time with other people. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I know, like, for myself, if I go to a party or something, I'll have to ease into it. I'll start out with the dog or the record collection, and then work my way up to the people, and then I'll have a great time. And then afterwards, I'll be I'll be exhausted, and it'll just be time to spend some time alone and kind of reset a little bit.
Absolutely. And I've been to many a party where, the introvert host, it's, let's say, behind the bar, because, it's a defined period of time for that brief interaction. You get to say a little bit of hello to everybody. You don't get trapped in conversations. And it can be a little bit less of a lift than, let's say, working the entire room with a beverage in your hand.
For sure. Yeah. There's also, I think, so I was a bartender for a number of years, and I think the bar also serves as this kind of, let's call it a mental and emotional barrier. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit of separation. So it's you've kind of got your safe space back here that you own.
Yes.
In a sense. Anyways.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind about, us introvert folk, is that one of the highlights, not always, again, but one of the highlights, is that we can have a tendency, especially in certain situations, to listen more than we talk. And I see that as a bartender, that must have been the case for you for quite a while. Yeah. And in leadership, it is so useful, because you're not always going to have the right idea for the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. So for my more reserved introverts, for my internal processors, the ones where it takes them a while to kind of work through the idea, being aware of that tendency, having those around you be aware of that tendency, and being in circumstances that cater to that tendency and capitalize on it is the route to success, versus, getting dumped into that meeting where everybody's drinking from the same fire hose of information and having to edge their way into the conversation and respond on the fly. Those are not the best conditions for success for that style or that preference.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So tell us more about your clients. You work with introverts, but not exclusively with introverts. Yes. And you've got kind of it seems like a wide variety of clients, from NGOs or NPOs to actual government municipalities and governments as well. Who is your ideal client?
I think my ideal client is somebody who very much wants to be here and very much recognizes that it's time for a change, and coaching is the thing that is likely to help them bring it about. Mm-hmm. So that degree of readiness is not always present with all of my clients, but when it is, it's amazing, because they're all set to go. They've done whatever clearing they need to do of their mind and their schedule to make this work possible, and they're here and they're on time and they're fully engaged to make it happen. And that could be pretty much any industry or environment. As far as the change that they want, These are various things, and I see them fairly frequently. So, one is that they're preparing to jump into the next level of leadership, and they'd like to start engaging more like an executive before they become an executive. They perhaps even would like a major transition. They want to change careers or change cities or get ready for retirement. And the other one that I see fairly frequently is that you've got somebody who once upon a time, maybe not too long ago, had a strong brand as a doer or an expert or both. And they've found themselves in leadership. They are in charge now of the doers and the experts or both.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have things that they could probably stand to let go of. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's the leader of software engineers who can't keep their hands out of the code. It's the architect who wants to be drawing things still, even though they're actually leading a firm of architects. So letting go of that expertise that got you successful and making way for others is a real challenge across many, many different sectors. And I was quite surprised initially to see this because I was familiar with the way that it worked in the spaces I had worked in. But it almost doesn't matter if you're talking about, physicians or engineers or even to some extent lawyers, because, and you know this from having done this show for a while, the higher up you climb in leadership, the less you're actually responsible for doing.
Yeah, interesting. I like um, I like what you said about a leader who, someone who maybe is they're going to be promoted and they want to kind of level up before they get there. This idea, I think it's very common in our society, right? And the idea is to have, do, and then you can be, right? So if you have the right things, then you can do the right things that you need to do, and then you can be that person that you want to become. When in reality, if you flip that around to be, do, have, right? Be the executive that you're going to become, right? And then when you mentally become that executive, you can do the things that executive would do, and then you have that position. You grow into that position. You get promoted into that position.
And you show up in that way to
Right.
the where if it's working the way that it should, best case scenario, everybody around you is surprised that you haven't been promoted yet because they've already been thinking of you as that executive.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You mentioned so your ideal clients is kind of someone who sees maybe they feel like they see that the change is needed and they want to change. They're engaged. What are some symptoms that a leader might look for? Maybe they're not the most self-aware person in the world, but what are some symptoms that they might look for to say to realize, like, gosh, I need to level up.
Sometimes people will tell them, and isn't that a gift if they can actually take in the information and handle the feedback?
Right.
It could be as simple as, hey, I think it'd be a great idea if you worked on building up your executive presence with a coach, and we're going to provide the resources to make that possible, and you can choose the one that works best for you. So I see that scenario a lot. I also, by the way, see the scenario where the boss suggests something or the coworker suggests something, and they think about it a little bit before they come into coaching, and it's actually a somewhat different thing than what was suggested to them in the first place. So we don't always end up in exactly the spot that we predict we're going to end up after the 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is. But we always get where the person is going to want to go. It's just they discover they want something else along the way. So that's a sign. I think that feelings of discomfort are a pretty good sign too. And discomfort can be healthy in that you can find yourself at your growth edge and feel like this is really uncomfortable. And I want to push through it. I want to work through this with somebody who, maybe has the ability to help me think through it better than I could do it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to mix up discomfort with a feeling of not being safe. Those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
So the discomfort is a clue, and I think a lot of folks take it and run with it if they're being somewhat self-aware.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I like it. Where do you get your clients? How do you market yourself and your services right now?
I think the question kind of brings a different answer depending on the year or perhaps even the month. I'll say right off the bat that I do a fair amount of contract coaching work, and this is work for coaching companies or for coaches with slightly bigger practices than mine, where they will have large institutional clients and need multiple coaches to work on a project together.
Yeah.
So that has been remarkable for me in terms of expanding my network, in terms of exposing me to parts of the economy that I wasn't familiar with before as a nonprofit and government guy from here in the
Yeah.
East Coast of the US. So I do a fair amount of that work. I always have, and I imagine I'll continue to do it for a while. In my private practice, which I think is probably the nature of your question, it's mostly word of mouth and referrals. So it's people who I knew before I became a coach, people who they knew.
Mhm.
It is clients that I've had before and people they know. I've coached multiple parents of past clients. I've coached clients a few times when they've changed positions and gone into different companies and kind of taken me with them.
Mhm.
So there usually is some sort of a human connection with me, one or two or three jumps down the line.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I have an email newsletter as well on my website, peacefuldirection.com. And I do those things not necessarily for the objective of bringing strangers into the practice or doing some sort of a lead funnel, but more just to stay top of mind. Because what I've also discovered is that you may know that I'm a coach. You
Mhm.
may be familiar with me as a person even prior to my becoming a coach.
Mhm.
And that little conversation that happens in your head could be 6 months, a year, 3 years before the moment that you actually realize you need some support or someone you know needs some support.
Mhm.
So my task is to stay present and stay relevant with these folks in my network during the interim period.
Mhm.
And that's where I find the things that I write and the things that I put out there into the universe to be quite helpful versus, receive a copy of my email newsletter, click the button, and now you're a client kind of thing.
So you're doing some form of content marketing as well to keep these leads warm, to keep a relationship kind of going.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And I think I draw a slight distinction there between that and, let's say, the straight up idea of making money on the internet, and that I don't have courses that I sell. Many coaches do; they're very successful at it, but that's not something that I'm engaged in at this time. And this is kind of a running inner dialogue as well, because I've worked in marketing and communications for a while, so I know the tools, I know how things work, I know generally the mind of the consumer pretty well.
Mhm.
And I have somewhat of an uneasy relationship when it comes to sales. As
Mhm.
in, that if you're looking at a pair of pants on a website and you put it in the cart and you close the window and go away and do something else, you make dinner or, play with your kids, you're going to get an email saying, "Hey, did you forget about those pants you were looking at?" And that's really smart because people do. We get
Mhm.
we forget things, we get distracted, and that's never been more true. At the same time, I feel like the audience that I have is not necessarily looking for me to push them that hard into buying things. So what I struggle with at times is, how many reminder emails is enough?
Mhm.
If I've put the word out there that something is there and people want it, will they just grab it? Or is it like the pair of pants where I'm fighting distractions and I need to send 6 messages on the same topic to get some traction, which is something that really does not make me very comfortable.
Yeah. No, I think that tracks, man. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think there's a lot of people out there who feel the same way. Um, yeah, I would include myself among that list of people as well. I think doing doing content marketing, so writing articles, posting social media posts that where you're, and it's such a cheesy, overused word at this point, but you're creating value, right? You're trying to help your ideal client, and if you can continue to do that on a consistent basis over a period of time, you're keeping this relationship with your followers. I also don't love that term, but your social media followers, right? These are leads essentially, right? And if you can continue to do this content, like we call it content marketing, and be of value to them and help them out in some way. What I have found with our clients is that the sale becomes almost a non-issue, because what you've done is you've established a relationship with these people who are following you on social media. You've helped them. They see your content over and over again. They're watching it. Hopefully, ideally they're liking it, they're commenting on it, and so forth. And if and when the time comes, a year down the road, maybe 3 months down the road, maybe 2 years down the road, if and when the time comes where they are looking for a coach and they've been following you this entire time, it's not going to be a question. You're not going to have to sell anybody because they've already bought, right? It's just a matter of it's at that point it's just timing, waiting for the right timing.
That's right. No, I think you're right, and I think my experience to date has kind of proven that to be the case as well.
Yeah.
And that feels pretty good to me. It feels authentic. It feels personal,
Mhm.
and the honest truth of it is, I don't need to attract hundreds and hundreds or even dozens and dozens of new clients in a year.
Mhm.
It's a small practice. I'm one person. I have only but so much availability in the month,
Mhm.
and I want to make sure that I'm relentlessly devoted to every client that I have, regardless of how they come in the door.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I like it. Spoken with integrity. I dig it, Alan. I also want to talk about partnerships. You mentioned partnerships. So you've got, it sounds like maybe like joint venture partnerships with, you said, other coaches with bigger practices than yours, and they'll kind of contract or subcontract work to you. How do you, for other coaches listening to this program who might be interested in doing something like that, what advice would you give to them on not only how do you find partnerships like that, but how do you engage in partnerships like that with long-term success?
I think there's a couple of ways you can go at it, and I've kind of done both, and it's sort of a question of scale.
Hmm.
So I have found almost universally coaches to be very generous people, and we share prospective clients all the time. We share projects together, and even if I have a conversation with a prospective private client, I will still recommend that they go talk to two or three other coaches, because in this business, the fit is almost the most important thing. Assuming you've got people who are qualified, capable, certified, educated, etc., you pick the one that fits the best. It's a gut move rather than something that comes from your brain. And so what that means is that I am very much not the best coach for every single person I'm going to come across.
Hmm.
And I will refer those other people to friends and colleagues of mine who I trust, who have integrity, who do, good work with all sorts of other different types of clients.
Hmm.
And so referrals are a thing. And sometimes referrals happen for free. Sometimes there's a fee exchange. It depends on, the business model. And one of those people that you refer out to might next week have a project that requires 5 coaches and they're only one person.
Hmm.
And that's where they create the bench of people they're going to work with and bring in to do the project together. So for that, I don't think you really have to do anything other than just be around, keep good track, and make yourself useful to the people you went to coaching school with, and go to your local ICF chapter gatherings. The Metro DC chapter that we have here in this area where I live is one of the biggest in the country. And there are constantly events where you can go meet people in the breakout rooms on Zoom. You can go to, talks by people who bring different parts of their practice in. Those are all great places to meet coaches, and coaches are going to help bring you business. And the other thing is, there are really, really large coaching companies out there now. And there used to be a few, and now there are a lot. So do a little bit of research, figure out who's hiring, what level of credential or education they're looking for, and get yourself on the bench, because these companies, a lot of them are venture capital funded. They're growing explosively year over year. I've worked for a couple of them myself. They're a great place to get your feet wet, to get some experience in a new area, and to meet other great coaches who also typically have thriving private practices and exchange a lot of business on the side.
Yeah.
So to me, it's kind of like ideal networking for introverts, to go back to that theme again, because, if you're active on LinkedIn, if you're carefully taking down the name of every coach you're ever in a breakout room with and staying in touch with that person, eventually you will have a big enough network that will bring you business, and you can bring business to it as well.
Nice. Great advice. What is Alan? What is a typical what does a typical engagement with you look like?
So with a brand new client, I'm probably going to go either 3 to 6 months to start. And we'll typically meet a couple of times a month. I have unlimited access to me by email for all of my one-on-one clients. I have a group coaching program that I'm co-hosting with my friend Jennifer Hart that's open access, and people can sign up to go to one or all of those events that are happening once a month. All my one-on-one clients also get access to that as part of their coaching package. And I have unlimited 15-minute catch-up refills if they need those in between the big 60-minute sessions. So I like to be present and available whenever they need me, even when the calendar doesn't completely cooperate. I'm going to be sharing a fair number of resources with my clients in between sessions. in that I'm a pretty voracious reader. And also, as you know, I was a journalism major and a communications person, which makes me an expert in nothing at all. So I say all that to say, being right here, the generalist of generalists, I
Uh-huh.
tend to know who the experts are on those themes that come up over and over again in coaching,
Okay.
whether it's executive presence or delegation or introverts or whatever that is, and I refer them to my bookshelf or my TED Talks or my videos in my library. I've got a library on my website that people can grab for free. And a lot of my clients, if they want to deepen their understanding of an issue that comes up in coaching, it's a good place for them to go because, of course, the coach isn't supposed to be the expert anyway.
Yeah.
So that's how we do it.
I like it. I like it. Are you familiar with like a phone app called Voxer?
I have heard of this where it's like you can make yourself available to people that way.
It's kind of, yeah, it's asynchronous. It's an asynchronous walkie-talkie,
Hmm.
basically. So you can hit the button and then you can record something and voice something and then send it to the other person. It does text as well. I've got a friend of mine who is a coach, an executive coach, offers that to his clients. In addition, you mentioned email 24 hours a day, right? This friend of mine also does Voxer. So if for example, with a busy executive, right, they might not be sitting down at a computer to type out an email, or they might not want to type it out on their phone, but they can hop into the Voxer app and hit that button and send it over. And again, it's asynchronous. So then that coach can just check it and then get back to them at any point in time.
Yeah, this is the second coaching context for Voxer I think that I've heard of in the last 2 weeks,
Yeah.
which is signaling to check it out. It sounds like it's something that could be very useful, and of course, with the usual caveat of okay, we have another thing we need to check on a regular basis. So
That's the trick.
I will take your counsel and check that out.
Yeah. The other one would be like if Voxer doesn't end up working out, would be like something like WeChat, which is a similar thing, right? Or not WeChat, I'm sorry, WhatsApp,
Yep,
which would be similar. But
which is great for international clients as well.
yeah, yeah. Tell us about some big wins that you've had in your career so far.
Oh, wow. Well, let's leave aside the 20 plus years before coming to coaching, just knowing the audience, and say a couple of things. One, I was very pleased back in 2021 to write a book. I collected some analogies that were coming up in my coaching practice, either from my clients' brains or from my own.
Hmm?
My wife, who's an elementary school art teacher, illustrated it. The title is Don't Just Have the Soup. So we put a collection out there in November 2021, and it's been fun watching people, send me their pictures of that in their hands or quote back to it from coaching sessions.
Huh?
Yeah, and I'm not done with the collecting analogies, so there might be more to report on that front at some point in
Wow.
the future. Uh, that was a joy for a couple of different reasons. One, coaching reaches a certain number of people in a year, and that's all you've got. And so, a book reaches a lot of folks. It's a pretty low barrier investment. And come to find out, there were a fair number of people who knew me and were following my career from before I was a coach who were maybe looking for some kind of way to engage with my practice, but weren't going to become clients. And there you go. There's the book. So that's been fun. And the other is just, whenever there's a triumph from a client that I get to hear about, and you don't always hear the end of the story. That's kind of an occupational hazard in coaching. But now and again, there's a real win, and you feel so good on that person's behalf. Whether it's the executive director of a nonprofit who was merging her organization with another and knew that she'd be out, as part of the terms of the merger, and was able to negotiate some higher severance as a result of the conversation that we had. To an executive that I worked with who negotiated up his employment contract as a result of a conversation. To somebody who hired me because he was trying to find his first new job in 21 years and didn't know what to do,
Wow.
and had somebody on the phone asking him if he was available 2 days after he turned in his laptop on that job that he was seeking to resign from. So
Nice.
uh, you love it when it happens. And
Yeah.
even if it's as small as, I was really dreading that conversation with my underperforming employee, but I feel like it really went well and we have a great understanding now. I love those moments. Those
Yeah.
moments are
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Very cool. I'm guessing your book has got to be that orange one that's right behind you there.
the one sitting on the book stand on the bookshelf. Yes, it is.
Nice. I love it. I love it. And people can get that on Amazon.
Yeah, they can, or they can go to the soupbook.com and it'll have listings for, if they prefer other booksellers or
Superbook.com. Awesome.
yes.
I'm just going to take some notes here, guys. For those of you listening to this, if you're in your car or perhaps out jogging, out for a jog or out for a run, we'll have links to all this stuff on the show notes, so you can come back and check up there.
Excellent.
Awesome, Alan. What three books? Any three books, including yours, if you think it's a good idea. What three books do you recommend your clients read?
Oh, wow. So I will tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, I have a book list on my website, and it probably has 50 books in it. So I would hesitate to say, these three are the ones, because you never know what somebody's going to show up with, or their background and what they're interested in. There's a few books that I recommend on a fairly regular basis, mine being one of them. There's a book called The Leader You Want to Be by Amy Jen Sue, who's a Georgetown coach like I am. Her book is fantastic. The Memo by Minda Harts is really, really good. And there's a few others on that list as well. You asked me for three, and that's awesome. The three that come to the top of my head.
That's great, man. That's great. I love it. Alan, is there anything else that you would like to chat about that we haven't had an opportunity yet to touch upon?
Well, I'm wondering, in terms of the folks who come on your show to chat,
yeah,
are there areas that you touch on with them that we haven't gotten into yet this afternoon?
Not that I can think of. Again, so I mean, we talked a little bit before I hit record, and every conversation is a little bit different, and we, you take sometimes you take this side street, and sometimes you take the one over there. But we got over pretty much, my big bullet points. I guess the one here actually that I seem to have skipped over. We talked about your remarkable wins. What about some remarkable failures? What about some times where you've maybe just royally screwed up and learned a lot from it?
Sure. Well, you want to keep confidences for your clients, and
Yeah.
that is something that I'm constantly mindful of. One thing that I can think of just off the top of my head, and again, you don't ruin anybody's life as you learn and go through this experience, and I'm fortunate for that, and that I'm not flying airplanes, I'm not performing open heart surgery here. The stakes are a little bit lower. The crises tend to be a little bit lower profile. But you always think as you go along, how might I have handled that situation differently? And I remember one of my very, very first clients, like almost fresh out of coaching school. And this from the other folks that have been on your show as well. They, in coaching school, they hammer this into you. Do not give them advice. You are not there to advise the client. You are not there to substitute your judgment for that of the client. What I have learned is, yes, that is true. And you want people to make their own discoveries, make their own decisions, come to their own conclusions based on what's already inside. 100% true. At the same time, I am a human being. I make observations. I have opinions. And if the thing is staring at you in the face over the course of the coaching session, you don't want to be that person who backs up and asks the few powerful, challenging questions to get them to name the thing that is absolutely obvious that is hanging over the entire conversation.
Sure.
And I had one of those very early on where the person I was coaching was, say, unfulfilled in the position that they were in. Mm-hmm. And was trying to figure out what's next. How do I even go about figuring that out? I'm early career, not exactly sure what my passion is, what I'm good at, etc. And happens to drop a nugget in a conversation that this person was a childhood friend of the offspring of a governor of a mid-Atlantic state. Okay, not something that most people say in conversation, but this person had been out. The governor had been out of office for a while, but still well connected, etc. And my client was talking about how they never had the thought to pick up the phone and to, sort of put themselves out there and inconvenience the parent of their childhood friend by saying, I would like some help finding a job, please. Mm-hmm. I would like to, have some idea on a career direction. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is probably the world's biggest missed opportunity, in that I've worked in government. I've covered government as a reporter. And I know that governors of states have tens of thousands of employees on their payroll. And their stock and trade is getting jobs for people, and it's not an inconvenience to them. It actually helps them as well. Mm-hmm. I didn't say the thing. I regret not having said the thing because it was so obvious to me at the time, even though it's giving advice to the client, which thou shalt not do. I feel like in that particular instance, it actually would have been helpful, and I missed the opportunity.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a good one. I like the I like your thought process to get there. Because yeah, usually like that's kind of like it's almost the line of delineation between coaching and consulting, right? As a coach, you're a guide, and as a consultant, you tell.
Yes,
But you're not supposed to tell as a coach.
that's right. And
So
and pulling on that thread just a little bit because I've had plenty of career changers and job seekers come through this space since then.
mm,
We talk a little bit about how the process works and how the process doesn't. And I think what holds a lot of people back from getting something that they really want and would enjoy is they feel like they're inconveniencing others. As in, if I call my friend Alan, who I haven't spoken to in a couple of years, and ask him to introduce me to this person who works at the company where he used to work, that's an inconvenience. I'm putting him out. I'm asking him to do something that's just, kind of beyond reach. It's
mhm.
not. Because if you ask me for this and I make the connection and you land in that position and you really go in and sort of crush it in that environment, it's a credit to you and it's also a credit to me.
Makes you look real good too. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say, by way of advice to anybody who's listening, again, not being the advice giving coach, ask. People like to do things for each other. And there is an exchange of value that's not obvious in that situation that I think I wish more people knew about.
I love it. That's a great one, Alan. Um, is there anything that do you have any programs, an ebook? You mentioned your book. Do you have anything else you would like to pitch? The stage is
Uh,
yours, my friend.
my uncomfortable relationship with the pair of pants notwithstanding, I'd love for folks to check out my book. I think they would find it helpful and amusing and interesting. I do have my group coaching essentials series that's still going on. You can get there through my website at peacefuldirection.com/essentials. It's open access group coaching. There's a different topic, a different theme every month. And we have a core group assembled of the people who started with the program, but there's more people coming in and kind of cycling out. So join us, check it out. If you've been thinking about coaching or you have a particular interest in the theme that we're talking about that month, it's a real sort of low barrier of entry way to get in and to spend some time with some pretty fabulous people. So I'd say that, and certainly welcoming folks to stay in touch with me on LinkedIn, join my mailing list, whatever I can do to be of service, even if it's introducing folks to other coaches. That's something that I'm always happy to do as well.
Awesome. That's Alan, Alan, Heymann, Heymann on LinkedIn.com. Peacefuldirection.com is the website. Not the Peaceful Direction, just peacefuldirection.com. And guys, again, we'll have all these links on the show notes, so please go and check those out at boxer.agency. Alan, this has been a great conversation, man. I appreciate you making time for us. Is there anything else you want to mention before we kind of close out?
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity, Michael, to connect with you and your audience. And let's do our best to stay in touch.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for joining us again. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.